Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Hey there.
And before we get into anything else today, I want to encourage you to subscribe to Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. So imagine stepping onto the pitch for a World Cup final, right? The pressure of a whole nation is just sitting heavily on your shoulders.
Oh, it's immense.
Right. And then you look across the sideline and realize the guy holding the clipboard for the enemy team, well, he's the exact same guy who built your playbook.
Yeah.
The architect of your attack is actively trying to dismantle it.
Yeah, it's a wild thought.
It really is. And that is the reality the back-to-back world champion Springboks are just like willfully walking into. The rugby world has just learned that Tony Brown, the current assistant coach for South Africa, has signed a 2-year deal to join their arch rivals, the All Blacks, starting in 2028 under Dave Rennie.
Yeah, quite the headline.
Exactly. We are looking at this unprecedented move through the eyes of two absolute legends of the game who recently dissected the ripple effects. So we have Victor Matfield, the 2007 World Cup winning Springbok, and John Kirwan, the 1987 World Cup winning All Black.
What's fascinating here is that this isn't a story of betrayal at all. I mean, in the hyper-competitive, often paranoid world of international sports, you would totally expect a move like this, especially between two teams in the greatest rivalry in rugby, to trigger locked doors, internal investigations, and, immediate dismissals.
Total lockdown.
Exactly. But instead, it is a testament to incredible forward planning by New Zealand Rugby. And simultaneously, it showcases this remarkable culture of open communication from the Springbok management. This transition is being handled with complete transparency, which completely defies the standard operating procedure of professional sports.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the timeline alone is what requires a massive suspension of disbelief. Tony Brown is going to stay with the Springboks, actively coaching them, sitting in their strategy meetings, and designing their attacking structures through the 2027 World Cup in Australia.
Right.
Then the following year, he just packs his bags, flies to New Zealand, and puts on the black jersey. Think about the corporate equivalent here. If a lead developer at a major tech giant announced they were taking all their institutional knowledge to a direct competitor in 2 years,
they wouldn't be allowed back to their desks.
Exactly. Their access badges would be deactivated before the meeting even ended. For a professional sports team to keep that person in the inner sanctum, well, there has to be a psychological mechanism in place to prevent absolute paranoia from rotting the team culture from the inside out.
Yeah, and that psychological mechanism is radical transparency. Victor Matfield points directly to Rassie Erasmus for engineering that specific environment. Matfield praises Erasmus's open communication policy because, well, it removes the oxygen that paranoia needs to survive. Paranoia breeds in the dark, right?
Right. It comes from all those whispered rumors.
Exactly. Players wondering where a coach's true loyalties lie. By addressing it head-on, Erasmus neutralizes the threat. Everyone in the Springbok camp knows the deal, which means the mental energy that would normally be wasted on suspicion is entirely redirected back to performance.
Makes total sense.
And we know this works because they have successfully navigated this exact kind of long-term departure before. Ahead of the 2023 World Cup, they allowed Jacques Nienaber to arrange his post-tournament move to Leinster, and they let Felix Jones agree to join England almost a year before the tournament kicked off.
So they essentially normalize the ambition of their coaching staff. Instead of treating a departure as a treasonous act, they just acknowledge it as a professional reality.
Spot on.
And obviously, they went on to win that 2023 tournament in France. The culture prioritized the immediate mission over any future political fallout.
They proved that if everything is laid bare, the team can compartmentalize the future and just execute in the present. And Matfield adds an important layer of context regarding Tony Brown specifically. Brown is a New Zealander. He earned 18 caps as a fly half for the All Blacks between 1999 and 2001.
Right, he's got history there.
Exactly. The Springbok management approaches this with pure pragmatism. For a proud former All Black to return home and coach his country, I mean, that is the ultimate pinnacle of his profession. South Africa knows they have him for this final, crucial stretch. They intend to extract every ounce of his tactical knowledge, push for a three-peat at the World Cup, and then shake his hand.
That pragmatic approach from South Africa contrasts sharply with how New Zealand usually operates, which makes their side of this equation just as intriguing. John Kirwan seems incredibly energized by this, specifically because New Zealand Rugby is usually scrambling, not strategizing years in advance.
Historically, international rugby coaching appointments are highly reactive. A 4-year World Cup cycle concludes, a team underperforms, coaches are dismissed, and federations just panic hire whoever is available on the market at that exact moment.
Yeah, that's always a scramble.
But Kirwan is thrilled because New Zealand rugby is finally behaving proactively. By locking in Dave Rennie and securing Tony Brown for 2028 now, they are building a cohesive long-term vision. They aren't waiting to see how 2027 pans out. They are actively shaping the environment for 2028.
Kirwan also threw in a rather provocative observation about the exchange of ideas here. He openly joked that once Brown finishes his tenure in South Africa, New Zealand is going to, in his exact words, steal all your IP and bring it back to New Zealand.
Yeah, that was a great line.
He justified it by saying South Africa did the exact same thing to New Zealand by hiring Brown in the first place. This concept of stealing intellectual property in a game as brutal and physical as rugby is fascinating. And before we dive into what exactly Tony Brown's IP actually consists of, I want to quickly remind you to subscribe to Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. You do not want to miss out on our deep dives into the tactical evolution of the game.
So the idea of intellectual property in rugby has fundamentally shifted. And to understand the IP Tony Brown is supposedly taking back to New Zealand, we first have to establish the baseline of what he is working with in South Africa. Matfield laid out the traditional Springbok DNA very clearly in this discussion.
Pretty heavy hitting, right?
Absolutely. It is a philosophy built on absolute, uncompromising physical attrition. They prioritize dominating the set piece, meaning the scrums and lineouts. They prioritize playing the game in the opposition's half through a relentless kicking game, and they back that up by dominating the aerial battle to regain possession.
They just squeeze the life out of the opposition. It's like a boa constrictor methodology. They aren't trying to trick you. They're explicitly telling you they're going to physically overpower you and then daring you to stop it.
Precisely.
Which leads me to a major contradiction in this whole scenario. If that heavy, territory-based physical DNA is so deeply entrenched in South Africa's rugby identity and has won them back-to-back World Cups, what on earth is an attack specialist like Tony Brown doing there?
It does seem a bit odd on the surface.
Right. It feels like hiring a Formula One aerodynamicist to tune up a bulldozer. If their primary objective is to kick high, chase hard, and crush you in the scrum, bringing in a Kiwi attacking mastermind seems counterintuitive. Is his mandate to turn the Springboks into a carbon copy of the All Blacks?
Not at all. Brown isn't there to replace the bulldozer. He is there to attach a precision guidance system to it. He is layering an X factor on top of their established foundation. Matfield made a brilliant observation regarding the evolution of the Springbok roster over the last few years.
Oh, the shift in personnel.
Yeah, exactly. We are seeing a distinct shift in their personnel. They are integrating smaller, incredibly explosive outside backs and wingers players with elite footwork who can break open a defensive line from anywhere on the pitch. Think about the profile of a player like Cheslin Kolbe.
Right.
Brown's specific intellectual property is maximizing the devastating potential of those specific athletes without compromising the heavy artillery up front.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Matfield stressed that Brown's impact isn't about installing a rigid playbook. He isn't like handing out binders with game plan A, and if the defense stops that, move to game plan B. His intellectual property isn't a specific set of moves, it's a cognitive framework.
Execution and decision-making at maximum velocity. In traditional coaching, you might run a set play from a line-out where the ball always goes to the inside center, crashing up the middle. It's pre-programmed.
And Brown hates that.
Brown detests pre-programmed outcomes. Instead, he trains visual processing. He puts players in chaotic, broken play scenarios in training and teaches them to read the defensive hinges. He trains a winger catching a high ball to look up, process the hips of the oncoming defender in a fraction of a second, and make an autonomous choice.
So, reading the body language in real time.
Exactly. If the defender's shoulders are turned inward, chip the ball over them into the space. If the defender is flat-footed, pass it wide. It is dynamic, real-time problem-solving under immense physiological pressure.
So he is essentially rewiring how the South African backline perceives space. He is creating adaptable thinkers who can exploit micro-errors in the defense instantly, rather than waiting for a set play to unfold.
Spot on.
But, that brings us to the elephant in the room. If Brown is systematically rewiring the brains of the Springbok players, elevating their cognitive processing to this elite level, shouldn't South Africa be terrified of 2028? He isn't just taking a playbook to New Zealand, he's taking a psychological map of how the South African players process information.
That's a valid concern.
Right, he will know what triggers them to kick, what makes them panic, and exactly how they read the game.
That vulnerability is exactly what traditionally fuels paranoia in professional sports. Matfield actually shared a highly specific, very personal anecdote to validate why players harbor that exact fear. He recalled a period when Gert Small, a highly influential South African assistant coach, swapped allegiances and went to work for the Irish national team.
Wow.
Yeah, and Small hadn't just coached Matfield. He had spent countless hours doing intimate, granular, tactical work with him on the mechanics of the Springbok lineout.
A lineout isn't just throwing the ball to a tall guy. It is a highly choreographed chess match of dummy movements, lifting pods, and split-second timing. And Small possessed the cipher to Matfield's entire system.
He knew Matfield's calling triggers, his eye movements before a specific jump, the exact cadence of his voice when he was bluffing versus when he was the primary target.
That's terrifying.
The consequence of that knowledge transfer was stark. When the Springboks played Ireland in Dublin in November 2009, Matfield, who is universally recognized as one of the greatest lineout operators in the history of the sport, was entirely neutralized.
Entirely.
Yes. The Irish forwards were mirroring his movements perfectly because their coach had provided them with the inner workings of Matfield's mind. They didn't just beat the Springbok lineout, they dismantled it at the source.
That is the ultimate nightmare scenario for a professional athlete. You step onto the pitch and realize the defensive line knows your next move before your own teammates do. The guy holding the clipboard on the opposite sideline literally helped build your brain.
It's devastating.
Given that devastating historical precedent involving the exact same team, why is there no panic about Tony Brown doing the exact same thing to the South African backline in 4 years?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, John Kirwan offers a perspective that completely reframes the modern game, rendering that kind of coaching espionage largely obsolete. Kirwan points out that the fear of stolen secrets belongs to a bygone era.
A bygone era.
Yeah. The modern sport has undergone a massive tactical homogenization fueled by data analytics, drone footage, and AI performance tracking. The geometry of rugby has essentially been solved.
Solved in what sense? You mean there are no new formations to invent?
Precisely in that sense. Aside from the foundational DNA differences we discussed, like South Africa's overwhelming reliance on physical attrition, Kirwan argues that the broader strokes of the game are identical across all Tier 1 nations.
Everyone's doing the same thing.
Exactly. Everyone utilizes the same highly optimized attacking pod structures because data analysts have universally proven that a 1-3-3-1 pod formation offers the highest probability of retaining possession and generating quick rec speed.
Right.
Everyone utilizes similar territorial ticking strategies because GPS tracking has mapped out exactly where the backfield space will be at any given moment.
Right.
There isn't a massive amount of tactical innovation left to hide in a secret vault.
So the concept of a secret playbook is just a myth now. The playbook isn't locked in a safe. It's being broadcast in 4K resolution from spider cams every single weekend. Every analyst in the world can chart exactly what the Springboks are doing within 48 hours of a test match.
Exactly why Kirwan believes the real value of a coach in the modern era has evolved. If the structural tactics are universally known, a coach's superpower isn't hoarding secrets, it's human optimization.
Human optimization. I like that.
Kirwan emphasizes that Tony Brown's true genius lies in his ability to instill supreme confidence. He creates an environment where players are empowered to execute those universally known tactics with absolute conviction. He gives a 22-year-old winger the psychological safety to try a high-risk chip kick in a World Cup semifinal, knowing that if it fails, the coaching staff will evaluate the decision process rather than punishing the outcome.
That is a profound shift in how we view sports leadership. It transforms the coach from a tactical dictator into an environmental architect. It's no longer about what you are telling them to do, because, well, everyone is doing the same thing. It is entirely about the belief and velocity with which the players execute it.
Kirwan shared a brilliant piece of history from the old Super Rugby days to illustrate how powerful this philosophy truly is. Back then, at the end of a grueling Super Rugby season, the head coaches from the rival franchises would actually congregate and openly share their ideas, their reviews, and their training methodologies with one another.
Wait, really? They voluntarily handed over their proprietary training notes to the exact guys they had spent the last 6 months trying to destroy on the pitch.
Yes.
That sounds completely antithetical to competitive sports.
Observers from overseas rugby markets thought the New Zealand and South African coaches had lost their minds. They couldn't fathom why you would voluntarily surrender a competitive advantage. But the philosophy underpinning that sharing was brilliant in its ruthless demand for excellence.
How so?
The coaches understood that if you share your best ideas, you instantly strip away your ability to rely on a hidden gimmick. If the Crusaders tell the Blues exactly how their lineout functions, the Crusaders can no longer rely on the element of surprise next season.
Oh, I see.
They are forced to innovate, evolve, and ultimately, they are forced to simply execute the known skill at a higher standard than the opposition. By sharing the information, they raise the technical ceiling for everyone, but most importantly, they force themselves to get better.
They burned their own boats to ensure they couldn't retreat to comfortable tactics. So applying that to our current scenario, Matfield's ultimate conclusion makes perfect sense. When Tony Brown eventually heads to New Zealand in 2028, he will undoubtedly take a wealth of intimate knowledge regarding the South African players with him.
He absolutely will.
He will know their tells, their preferences, and their weaknesses. But because of this open book policy right now, the South African players will also know exactly how Tony Brown's mind works. They will know what he values in an attacking system, what structural weaknesses he tries to exploit, and how he prefers his fly halves to manipulate space. It is a completely two-way street of transparency.
The information flow goes both directions, and what that does is strip away all the excuses. It shifts the entire competitive landscape of international rugby away from who has the cleverest secret scheme and places the burden entirely on who can execute the shared knowledge with more precision, more brutality, and better decision-making under the immense pressure of a test match. It purifies the contest.
It really strips the game down to its absolute essence. It makes it entirely about the player's skill, their physiological conditioning, and their mental fortitude in the heat of the battle, rather than the coach's sleight of hand. I want to throw this out to you listening right now. Do you think this kind of open communication and voluntary sharing of tactical frameworks makes international rugby a better, more compelling product? Or do you miss the days of heavily guarded team secrets, paranoia, and cloak-and-dagger coaching moves?
It's a great debate.
Does the homogenization of tactics bother you? Or do you love that it places all the responsibilities squarely on the athlete's shoulders? Let us know your opinions in the comments. We genuinely want to know how you view the evolution of the sport.
This transparency raises a crucial, somewhat philosophical question to leave you with as well. If John Kirwan's assessment is accurate, if the modern game truly has no real tactical secrets left to exploit, and success is determined purely by a coach's ability to cultivate player confidence, foster autonomous decision-making, and optimize human psychology in the heat of the moment, is the era of the traditional mastermind tactician officially over? If algorithms and data analysts can solve the geometry of the field, have we entered an era where the most valuable person in the coaching box isn't a tactician at all, but rather a high-performance psychologist? It's something to chew on the next time you watch a test match and see the coaches analyzing screens in the stands. Are they looking at formations or are they looking at body language?
That is a brilliant point to end on. The physical and tactical games have essentially reached a stalemate, meaning the final frontier for a competitive edge is entirely within the mind of the athlete. The psychologist coach is the new mastermind. Before we wrap up today's analysis, make sure to subscribe to Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description so you never miss these kinds of breakdowns. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.